My name is Sierra Grace Hamilton, and I was just 16 when I died. That sounds dramatic, I know. But there's really no softer way to say it. On the afternoon of March 12th, I stopped breathing somewhere along Timberline Trail, nestled in the peaks outside of Bozeman, Montana. One minute I was joking with my best friend Paige about how terrible we were at reading trail maps, and the next I was on the ground, gasping like the air had vanished from the earth. I wasn't a particularly sick kid. Asthma, sure, but it was mild, nothing that had ever sent me to the ER. That morning I'd even remembered to use my inhaler. I had water, granola bars, a fully charged phone. We were being responsible, or so I thought. I remember the tightness in my chest first. Not like a normal asthma attack. It felt like someone pressing down with both hands on my ribcage, trying to crush my heart from the outside. I told Paige I needed to rest. I leaned on a boulder beside the path and tried to focus on my breathing, but the world started tilting. Colors blurred. My legs gave out. Then darkness. But it wasn't like falling asleep. It was like falling upward. I didn't feel the dirt under me anymore. I didn't hear Paige screaming or the buzz of her phone as she called 911. I felt suspended, weightless, like being in warm water, only there was no pressure, no resistance, just an endless sense of being held. The pain was gone, completely gone, and in its place was a peace I can barely describe. I looked down and saw my body lying on the trail. Paige was kneeling next to me, crying, her voice cracking as she followed the 911 operator's instructions. She was pressing her hands into my chest, trying to restart something that no longer lived inside me. And I remember thinking, not with panic, but with awe, that's me. I floated there for a moment, completely detached but utterly aware. Then something shifted. A gentle pull, like a current in the ocean, drew me upward. I didn't resist. I didn't want to. The higher I went, the more the world below faded, not in color or sound, but in importance. There was a tunnel, not like a physical tube, but a sensation of moving forward through layers of light. It was all around me, pulsing softly, like music you don't hear with your ears but feel in your bones. The light grew warmer, deeper, until it became something more than brightness. It became love. And then I saw him. I know how that sounds. I wasn't religious before this, not really. I went to church on Easter with my grandma, maybe a candlelight service at Christmas. I'd heard stories of people meeting Jesus in visions, but I always filed them away as poetic symbolism. Comforting maybe, but real? But when I saw him, I just knew. He didn't look like the pictures in stained glass churches. He wasn't wearing a robe or sandals or a glowing halo. He was taller than I expected, his presence radiant, not in a blinding way, but like standing in front of the sun and not needing to shield your eyes. His eyes, God. His eyes, they looked into every corner of me. Every mistake. Every moment I'd hated myself. Every lie. Every hurt. And yet, they were filled with love. He said my name. Just once. Sierra. And when he did, it was like everything that had ever been broken inside me melted away. Tears streamed down my face, though I wasn't really crying. Not like I'd ever cried before. These were tears of release, of finally being known. I felt like I'd been holding my breath for 16 years and was now breathing for the first time. Am I dead? I asked him. He smiled, not with his mouth, but with his entire being. Your body is between worlds, he said. But I wanted to speak with you. He reached out his hand, and when I took it, something passed between us, like an electric current of truth, of home. In that moment, I saw my life. Not just the big milestones, but the tiny ones, moments I'd forgotten, like giving my sandwich to a kid who forgot his lunch in 3rd grade, sitting with a girl crying in the school bathroom, helping my little brother tie his shoes when mom was late for work. I also saw the parts one was ashamed of, the gossip, the jealousy, the lies. But even those moments were bathed in compassion. Not judgment, not shame, just understanding. And love. You are deeply known, he said. And still, you are deeply loved. Then he looked out into the horizon, though there wasn't really a horizon, and gestured. "There is something I need to show you." When Jesus said, "There is something I need to show you," I felt something shift around us. The light grew denser but not darker, like velvet infused with stars. And then suddenly, we were standing on something solid, a kind of platform suspended in nothingness. It felt like clouds underfoot, but firm, warm living. Below us stretched what looked like a moving map of the earth, alive and pulsing. Oceans shimmered, cities flickered with light, mountains breathed like sleeping giants. The world looked familiar and alien all at once. I stood beside him, trembling not from fear, but from the magnitude of where I was and who I was with. "I'm going to show you 3 events," he said, his voice like wind across water. "They will come before the end of this decade. Not to cause fear, but to prepare hearts." I didn't know what that meant then. Not fully, but I nodded. He extended his hand, and the first vision unfolded. I saw cities I recognized: New Orleans, Charleston, San Francisco. But they weren't the way I remembered them. Streets were flooded. Water coursed through subway stations and homes. Entire neighborhoods vanished beneath waves. It wasn't like a single storm. It was something bigger, a shift in the earth itself. People were screaming, running, climbing rooftops. I could feel their terror. But then Jesus touched my shoulder. "Look again," he whispered. And I saw something else. People, ordinary people, were helping each other. A man waded through chest-deep water to carry an elderly woman on his back. A group of teens formed a human chain to pull a child from a submerged car. A church threw open its doors and filled its pews with soaked, crying strangers. "In great trial," Jesus said, "there is also great unity." When comfort is stripped away, the heart remembers what truly matters. Tears blurred my eyes. I saw island nations crying out first, their coastlines devoured by the sea. And I felt their desperation, but I also felt their resilience. Jesus stood beside me, silent but present, his face full of sorrow and strength. "The earth groans," he said, "but humanity will rise. In love." The vision faded. I took a breath. Or maybe I didn't breathe at all. I still don't know how that works there, but I felt myself steady. Then came the second vision. This time I saw cities at night: Seattle, Chicago, Atlanta, and one by one the lights blinked out. Power stations failed. Satellites winked off. Phones died. Entire communication networks fell silent. There was panic at first. Confusion. Fear. People banging on closed grocery store doors. Car horns in the dark. The air felt still, like the world had been unplugged. Jesus spoke again, not loudly, but clearly. "What man has built in pride, he has come to depend on. But even the tallest towers cannot stand without humility." But then I saw something shift. People stepped outside. They began to talk to one another. Neighbors who had never spoken before shared food over candlelight. Someone played an acoustic guitar on a front porch. Children, stripped of screens, laughed in the grass under starlight. "In the silence," he said, "my voice will be louder. My light will shine brighter." I saw families praying together for the first time. I saw old enemies sitting down at kitchen tables. I saw firelight casting peace over chaos. Even in the dark, I saw hope. And then he looked at me. "There is one more." I wasn't ready. I felt a chill, though there was no cold where we were. This vision was hardest to watch. I saw hospitals overflowing, not just from illness but from fear. People were afraid to touch one another, afraid to gather, afraid to speak. I saw children pulled from schools, elderly people isolated in nursing homes, families breaking apart from distrust and misinformation. Jesus said, softly, "There will be a new illness, but the greater disease will be fear itself. And some will use it to divide, to control, to deepen the wounds already present." But even as fear spread, I saw light flickers of it, like candles in a storm. Nurses holding hands with patients as they died. Children writing messages of love on windows. Strangers delivering groceries, not for pay, but for compassion. And most of all, I saw prayer. Not in cathedrals, not in perfect words, but whispered in living rooms, cried out in hospitals, murmured in parks. A global wave of prayer, unseen but powerful. Jesus reached out and touched a thread of light hovering between us. Each one of these, he said, is a prayer. I watched as the thread lit up, then lit hundreds more, a web of light spreading across the earth. As I stood beside Jesus, watching the threads of light stretch endlessly in every direction, I realized what I was seeing wasn't just symbolic. It was real, more real than anything I'd ever experienced. Each golden thread shimmered like a living heartbeat, and when Jesus touched one, it sent a cascade of ripples, lighting up dozens, hundreds, then thousands more. This was your prayer, he said. I looked closer and saw the moment clearly. Me, lying in bed 3 weeks before, whispering a half-hearted plea for my friend Harper. She'd been withdrawn, lately depressed maybe. I didn't know what to do, so I had just whispered, "Please help her," into the silence of my room. Then I'd turned over and gone to sleep. Jesus looked into my eyes. That single prayer strengthened her spirit enough to get through her worst night. It touched her mother's heart to check in. It gave her counselor clarity. And it softened your heart, so you sat with her the next day in silence, even though you didn't know what to say. I was speechless. Tears rolled down my face. A sincere prayer, he continued, moves through dimensions you cannot see. It changes lives, Sierra. It saves them. I felt the truth of it echo inside me like a drumbeat. How many prayers had I tossed into the air, never expecting answers? How many moments had I dismissed as small, while heaven was vibrating with consequence? In the times to come, Jesus said, prayer will not be optional. It will be essential. We stood there in silence, the golden threads pulsing between us. I wanted to stay forever. The peace, the love was total. Every ache in me had been soothed. Every doubt washed away. I felt like I'd finally come home. I looked at him. Can I stay? I whispered. Please. I don't want to go back. His expression softened with a love that nearly broke me. My beloved, he said, brushing a strand of hair from my face like my mother used to when I was little. I understand. This is your true home. One day you will return. But not today. I shook my head. Why not? He looked at me, not with pity, but with purpose. You have work to do. A voice. A light. Many will face what you've seen and not know how to endure it. They will need your story not to scare them, but to prepare them. I felt the weight of his words settle into my soul. My hands trembled. I'm afraid. He touched my cheek. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is walking forward through it. And you will not walk alone. Then he did something I will never forget. He hugged me. But this was no earthly hug. This was being held by the source of every good thing. Every embrace from my mom, every moment of warmth, every safe place I'd ever known, it all existed inside that hug, multiplied 1,000 times. You will remember this, he whispered. Even when the world tries to make you forget, a part of you will always remember the way home. Then it changed. It felt like falling backward at light speed. The light around me twisted, stretched, fractured. I tried to hold on, but there was nothing to grasp. I screamed not from pain, but from the fear of losing that love. And then pain. A crushing, searing pain in my chest. Cold air burning my lungs. Voices shouting. The screech of tires. The high-pitched wail of sirens. We've got a pulse. I opened my eyes. A woman in paramedic gear hovered above me. You're okay, sweetheart, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You're back with us now. I spent 3 days in the hospital. They said it was sudden cardiac arrest, likely caused by a genetic condition no one had known I had. They said Paige saved my life by performing CPR until the medics arrived. They said I had been clinically dead for nearly 4 minutes. 4 minutes. But to me, it felt like an eternity and a breath. The cardiologist kept calling me a miracle. No brain damage, no organ failure. Nothing short of impossible, he said, shaking his head. I didn't tell him the full story. Not at first. The hardest part wasn't the pain. It wasn't even the hospital or the whispers at school or the device they implanted in my chest to jolt my heart if it ever stopped again. The hardest part was feeling so far away from him. I had been wrapped in perfect love, eternal love, and now I was back in a world of fluorescent lights and paper gowns. A world where people checked their phones instead of making eye contact, where the TV in my hospital room buzzed with war, politics, and endless noise. For 3 days, my mom barely left my side. She slept in that impossible hospital chair like she'd anchored herself to me. I waited until she stepped out for coffee before I told my dad what had happened. I expected disbelief, maybe even mockery. Dad was a man of facts and spreadsheets, a civil engineer who could build a bridge across any river, but rarely crossed into anything he couldn't prove. But when I told him everything, he didn't interrupt once. He just held my hand. Then he said quietly, "When I was in college, I was in a car wreck." I flatlined, only for a minute or two. I've never talked about it, not even to your mom. But I saw something too. Not what you saw, but enough to know this life isn't all there is. He was crying. My dad, who didn't even cry at his own father's funeral. And that's when I knew. These experiences aren't rare. They're just hidden. People don't talk about them because they're afraid of being called delusional, dramatic, or worse. But after what I saw, I couldn't keep quiet. When I got home, everything looked different. I don't mean visually exactly. The sky was still blue. The mountains still rimmed the edge of town like they always had. But it was like someone had turned up the saturation on life itself. Colors were deeper. Music hit harder. Even the mundane things, my brother's loud video games, the sound of the washing machine, the squeaky front gate, carried a strange new beauty. I started seeing people, really seeing them. The cashier at the gas station whose smile never reached his eyes. The old woman on our street struggling with trash cans twice her size. The freshman girl who always sat alone at lunch, pretending to text someone. And I started dreaming. Not normal dreams. In these dreams, he came back to me. Not always in form. Sometimes it was just his voice. Sometimes just light. But he showed me more glimpses of the world. Moments unfolding in quiet corners of time. Lives intersecting in ways I couldn't possibly know. Most of it didn't make sense yet. But I knew it would. In time. I told Paige everything. She cried. She told me she'd been praying out loud the entire time she did CPR. "I didn't know if you could hear me," she said. "I just begged God not to take you." I thought of the golden threads, and I wondered, had her prayer been the one that pulled me back? At school, the rumors spread fast. People are quick to fill in blanks when they don't have answers. Some kids were curious. Others avoided me like I was radioactive. A few made jokes, called me Zombie Girl or Saint Sierra. I didn't care. When you've been held in infinite love, the opinions of teenagers don't carry much weight. I knew I couldn't go back to life as it was. So I started something. At first, it was just 4 of us, me, Paige, a quiet girl named Alyssa from art class, and our neighbor Ms. Rubin, who'd lost her husband last year. We met in my basement every Thursday. No agenda. Just talking about the stuff people don't normally talk about. What matters, what lasts, how to live when you've seen beyond the veil. We read. We prayed. We cried. And people came. First 10. Then 15. Students. Teachers. A boy who had tried to take his own life. A girl who had lost her mom to cancer. A couple struggling to rebuild after infidelity. We didn't have answers. But we had space. And hope. I don't share everything I saw. Not everyone is ready. That's okay. Jesus didn't show me those things to make me famous or special. He showed me so that I could be a light, a reminder that the story isn't over, even when it looks like everything is falling apart. If you're reading this or listening or sitting in one of our circles, I want you to know. Don't be afraid. That's not the message. Not at all. The message is this. Love is stronger than fear. Stronger than flood or silence or sickness. Stronger than death. What I saw coming, the waters, the dark. the division, it's not the end. It's just the storm before the sunrise. Part 5. What truly matters. Sometimes I think about the girl I used to be. The Sierra who worried about SAT scores, TikTok trends, whether her sneakers were clean enough to impress her crush. The girl who scrolled endlessly, always reaching for something, never really knowing what she was trying to hold. That girl died on Timberline Trail. And what came back wasn't her. Not exactly. I've thought a lot about what it means to live after you've seen the other side. It's not like the movies. I didn't wake up with magic powers. I don't walk around glowing. I still get annoyed, still cry when I'm overwhelmed, still forget to text people back. But everything is infused with meaning now. I don't see time the way I used to. Every moment feels like a thread in that great golden web. I saw a prayer waiting to be prayed, a kindness waiting to ripple, a heart waiting to wake up. I've stopped trying to be perfect. That wasn't the point of what I saw. If anything, it was the opposite. Jesus didn't love me because I got everything right. He loved me in spite of the things I got wrong. He loved me when I gossiped about friends, when I rolled my eyes at my mom, when I hated myself quietly in front of the mirror. And if he could love me like that, maybe I could try to love others that way too. So I live differently now. I wake up and pray, not always with words. Sometimes just with breath. I ask God to use me, to help me see who needs a smile, a word, a hand. I make room at lunch for someone sitting alone. I pause when someone cuts me off in traffic and wonder what pain they're rushing toward. I send texts to people I haven't spoken to in months, just to say, you were on my heart today. Not because I'm holy, because I've been held by holiness, and I remember what it feels like to be seen. I still don't know why some prayers are answered the way we want and others aren't. I don't know why I came back, but other kids like me don't. But I do know this. Nothing is wasted. Not the hurt. Not the healing. Not the 4 minutes I spent technically dead. Those 4 minutes, those eternal 4 minutes gave me a mission. To remind people, this isn't all there is. That behind the noise, beyond the fear, there's something more. A love so complete it defies language. A peace that wraps itself around your soul and whispers, you are never alone. So if you're reading this because you're scared of the future, of the world, of loss, I want you to know, there is hope. The floods will rise. The lights will go out. The fear will creep in. But love, divine love, will not fail. Not then. Not now. Not ever. My name is Sierra Grace Hamilton, and I died on March 12th. But more importantly, I lived.